Okay, in part one, we looked at cruises that focused on the southern part of the African continent. In part two, we figured out how to get there. We can cruise to and from South Africa, but some would say I saved the best for last. Others might say that I saved the grandest, a grand African cruise for last. Hey, welcome to This is the Cruise. I'm Clint, and this is the channel where we look at future cruise itineraries and try to find out if this is the cruise for you. Today, we're looking at a Grand African Voyage that goes round trip from Fort Lauderdale, of all places. It's on Holland America, and it leaves in less than a month, granted, but that's okay because there are more grand tours coming, and I thought this would be a good way to get started. We're wrapping up our African series. We're starting a new ongoing series looking at Grand Voyage cruises. And this one just may be popular enough that Holland America will do it again. And if they do, I'm hoping they take some of my suggested tweaks. Stay to the end for those, because I have some ideas. Okay, but first, as always, I really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow the channel. I would really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. It's just a quick click from you. A little like, a little love goes a long way. I really appreciate it. Let's get started. First, we need to talk about what a Grand Voyage is. I consider a Grand Voyage to be a single itinerary that's longer than a month and often covers multiple regions of the world. The longest cruise that we've done was a 25-day Mediterranean cruise. It started as a 12-day that focused on Spain, plus a 13-day focusing on the Adriatic. We could have then done another 11-day cruise that focused on the Eastern Mediterranean as well, had we had the time and the budget. Even though that would have been longer than a month, I wouldn't consider it a Grand Voyage because it wasn't a single itinerary. It was really just multiple cruises strung together. Holland America has a 73-day Grand Voyage starting in October 2023. That's coming up based on when I'm recording this video, but I thought it would be a great way to wrap up this African cruise series. So let's take a look at what the cruise does and find out if this is the cruise for you. When talking about cruises to Africa, there's a lot of painful history that we could get into, and I'm not going to wade into that, the tragic colonial history that this cruise, but the cruises in this entire series have just started to expose us to. I also want to acknowledge the history though. I want to recognize the tension and honor the incredible and amazing people who have endured so much in these lands that we're just visiting. As for me, I pray for peace and justice throughout the entire world, and cruising to the places I couldn't otherwise visit brings me just a little bit closer to being more than simply a curious bystander. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Like I mentioned, this cruise goes round trip from Fort Lauderdale, and if you've watched any of my other itinerary videos, you'll know that I really like Fort Lauderdale as a place to start cruises. It's so accessible for those of us in the United States, and if you're flying from overseas, the airport is right by the port. This really isn't a repositioning cruise though, even though it's going over to Africa, because it is round trip and it's one itinerary. The trip before this cruise is a New England cruise that this ship does, and the trip after, it does a Panama Canal cruise, so it's back in the Caribbean. And then after that Panama Canal cruise, it does another 129-day Grand Voyage around the world. Okay, so this ship has got a lot going on. We're gonna depart from Fort Lauderdale, and then we have to get across the Atlantic. So we have an initial, right away, 7 days at sea. Our first stop is going to be Funchal, Madeira, Portugal. This was settled around 1400 by Portuguese navigators with a population of about 100,000 people. And it's one of Portugal's main tourist attractions. It's also, in spite of the mainland, it is the leading cruise port for Portugal. From here, the cruise heads on down to the Canary Islands, and we do get a Canary Island stop. This is really part of Spain. It's less than 200 kilometers off the coast of Morocco. It has a very Mediterranean feel to it, with a population of about 60,000 people. The interesting thing for me is that there's about 300 volcanoes on the island. And the name, Arrecife Lanzarote, I'm sure I'm getting that very wrong, refers to the volcanic reefs that boats could hide behind when they were trying to protect themselves from pirate attacks. I know we would be exploring the volcanoes for sure. From here, we're actually going to go across to Morocco, which has an excellent climate with a lot of sun. It makes this stop a particularly popular stop when visiting Morocco. There's a population of about 500,000 people here, so we're starting to get some of that vibrant life that we get to experience. We would walk along the promenade, visit the markets, ride a camel, but make sure we wouldn't miss the Berber tea. Then we're going to head down. We're actually going to head north to Casablanca. On my bucket list of places to visit, this is Morocco's largest and most important port. It was settled by the Romans. And we would probably grab a shot of Moroccan espresso, and then take a trip to the historic imperial cities of Marrakesh and Rabat. There's enough time in this port stop to do that, which is pretty great from an itinerary and experience perspective. Then we're going to cruise through the Strait of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean and go to Tunis, Tunisia, with a population of almost 3 million people. I'm really torn here because I would like to visit Carthage, or I'd want to visit the Medina of Tunis, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I don't know if there's time for both, but one of those two things would be what I would like to do here. Then we head to the island of Crete, which is the largest of the Greek islands. I would be exploring the waterfront of Hania and have a glass of local wine. I think just resting and enjoying the vibrancy of the island is what I would want to do. From there, we're going to head to another island, Cyprus. This is the southernmost city in Europe with a population of about 100,000 people. There's a lot of archaeological history to explore here, and if that's your thing, I'd visit the Medieval Museum of Cyprus, which is also known as the Limassol Castle. I think I'm again getting that right. This is a castle of Richard the Lionheart fame. I think the history would be really interesting. Then we're going to head on and cruise, not get off the ship, but we're going to cruise through the Suez Canal. We're going to enjoy the sights between meals. It takes the whole day, so you've got time. I think, what I would recommend doing, and we've done this before when we've gone through canals and through rivers, is we always have our phone out and running a map like Google Maps where we're trying to see, okay, this is where we are. That's what we're seeing there on shore. Check this out, and kind of looking at the landscape as we go. Next, we're going to stop at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, which is on the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. My family, we would probably be snorkeling at Ras Mohammed Nature Reserve, where there's, amazing coral surrounded by ocean life, and it's easily accessible to the beaches that are right here. But if you were up for it, I don't think I would do this, but you could do a Bedouin tent experience and camel ride. I mean, snorkeling the reefs, doing a Bedouin tent, I don't know how you pick just one. You are here for 10 hours. You might be able to do both, but you might want to save the Bedouin experience for the next stop, where we go to Aqaba for 2 days. But really, that's just to get us to Petra. This is a territory that has been inhabited for 6,000 years. It's linked to the legend of Lawrence of Arabia. There's so many historical sites and natural wonders. Obviously, it's Petra. Holland America is actually doing an overnight experience. It's an overnight excursion that you book through the ship, where you stay in a Bedouin camp overnight under the stars. Or you can do a hotel version if that's more your speed, but I mean, I don't know, I'm staying in the tents if I could, and just really experiencing the culture and the area. Talk about amazing. Then we're going to head down to Safaga, Egypt, which you could stay in port. It's, if you really want to, maybe you've been here before. There's a millennia of history having been founded in, 2 millennia of history having been founded in 270 BC. I mean, I have a hard time wrapping my head around those numbers. But I want to, and you most likely really want to visit Luxor, where you'll be able to tour the Valley of the Kings. You can even do this on a riverboat on the Nile. I mean, we're talking colossal temples and pharaoh tombs. just does it get any better than that? There's the Nile. Then we're going to have 5 days at sea. We're going to cross the equator and we're going to head down to the Seychelles Islands, where we're going to spend 2 days exploring this group of 115 islands in the Indian Ocean. They're about 1,000 miles off the east coast, and if you're concerned about safety, this is one of those stops where it swings way, way wide of some of the more dangerous coasts of Africa. So we come out here into the Indian Ocean. We have a couple of days to stop, relax, enjoy, explore. After sleeping in tents in Egypt, and then being at sea for a while, we can now get on the beaches and sort of experience the island life that is just gorgeous in the Indian Ocean. Then we're gonna have 2 more days at sea next, where we cruise over to Tanzania. We're actually headed to Zanzibar. This is off the coast of Tanzania, and it's really known as the Spice Island, which is one of the few places in the world where saffron is produced. Here we would be visiting the city market in Stone Town. This is the Old Town section of Zanzibar, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You're gonna start to see a pattern here. There's a lot of those. Then we have another day at sea as we make our way down to Mayotte, which is another island stop as we approach Madagascar. This has a population of about 70,000 people. It's an overseas department of France, just like Reunion, though the landscape's a little bit different. So if you've been to Reunion, it's possible you haven't been here, so you have a different experience, though they are both heavily influenced by the French culture. And this really is a tropical beach stop, so we're spending time on the beach here. Then we're gonna head over to Nosy Be, Madagascar. It's a beautiful tropical island, and it's also nicknamed the Scented Island for its aromatic cultivation of coffee, cacao, ylang ylang, vanilla, cinnamon. So if you're into perfumes, this is your stop. There's a population on the island of about 100,000 people. We would be snorkeling and relaxing on the beach, maybe visiting some of the national parks for some wildlife. It is Madagascar after all. Then we're going to spend 2 days at sea as we get across the water to Mozambique. We're going to visit Maputo, which is Mozambique's capital. It's the largest city, has tons of history to explore. In part 1, I covered this stop and I suggested some really interesting things that you could do if you're looking for something adventurous, enriching, or relaxing. So I would check out part 1 after you finish this video if you didn't watch part 1, because it's going to give you some ideas for excursions that you can actually do at all of these ports along the southern part of Africa. Then we're going to go down to Durban, which is in South Africa, which again has a ton of stuff, some amazing city life, lots of culture and history here. If you're into soccer or football, I know there's a lot of history here for that as well to check out. Great snorkeling, amazing beaches, and definitely worth exploring. Then we're gonna have 2 more days at sea as we make our way over to Cape Town. Fortunately, because Cape Town is incredible, we have 2 days in Cape Town. And again, I covered a lot of Cape Town in part 1 of this series, so definitely check that out. One thing to note is that this itinerary could be split into halves. You could do the first half or the second half, and this is that halfway point. You would be either getting off the ship at Cape Town to travel home, unless Cape Town is your home, or you could be flying to Cape Town where you pick up the ship and now we're going to cruise back north up the western side of Africa. So we start out again with the second half with 1 day at sea, where we then cruise up to Namibia in the city of Lüderitz. Again, I covered a lot of Lüderitz. One of the things to note though is that this is settled by Germans and has a very strong Bavarian architectural culture. So check out part 1 again, but just to kind of let you know where we are, we're at day 50 of this cruise already, and think about what we've already covered so far. It's pretty incredible. Then we're going to cruise up along the coast of Namibia to Walvis Bay. This is the last stop where I actually covered it in part 1. So check out part 1. There's, I think if I'm not mistaken, the oldest sand dunes in the world are here or accessible to Walvis Bay. So that would maybe be worth checking out as well. And if you are into flamingos, they have flamingos. Then we're going to spend 2 days at sea as we go up to Angola, which was founded by the Portuguese in 1576. It's the most populous Portuguese-speaking capital city in the world, which is pretty amazing. There's 8.3 million residents here in Angola. I would take a tour that walks through the history of Luanda. It's been through a lot, but it has come a long way. And I would want to be here to kind of celebrate that. I think that's worth celebrating. Then we're going to spend 2 days at sea and cross the equator again, where we get to Takoradi, Ghana. And I would probably do one of 3 things. I would explore the Kakum National Park, or I'd check out a cocoa farm, which is the primary export of Ghana, and Ghana is the second largest exporter of cacao in the world. So that would be really interesting. We've been on the ship now for over 50 days. Holland America is actually offering a really interesting excursion where you can volunteer at the Cape Coast School for the Blind and Deaf. You know, it's been 2 months. We've been catered to. Now's not a bad time to give back a little bit, and I think that would be worth doing. But whatever I'm doing, I am definitely checking out the local cuisine. Then we're going to head further along the coast up to Abidjan. And sorry if I'm saying that wrong, which has a population of 6.3 million people. Almost 1/4 of the country live in this city. It was colonized by the French, so there's a heavy French influence here, but it is known as the Manhattan of the tropics. I think I would take a food tour here and get to know the culture more through food. That sounds pretty amazing to me. Next, we're going to spend a couple more days at sea as we cruise up the coastline. So then we end up in Banjul, the Gambia. It has a population of about 400,000 people. What's interesting to note is that the Republic of the Gambia is the smallest mainland country in Africa and is surrounded by Senegal, except for the west coast where the Gambia River enters the Atlantic Ocean. If I was on this cruise, I would canoe the mangroves in the Makusudu Culture Forest and check out the wildlife. That's canoeing the Gambia in the Gambia sounds pretty incredible, but I keep it restful and relaxing because the next stop goes to Dakar, Senegal. This is a very frenetic, fast-paced city, so the energy is going to be there and is palpable. After sampling the local cuisine and checking out the music, I'd head to the island of Gourye, which is just a ferry ride. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and played a significant role in the slave trade and is quite sobering. But I think it would be important to do. Then we're going to have another day at sea and we're going to head up to Cape Verde. Or we're going to head over to Mindelo, Cape Verde, which is a 10-island archipelago that's home to about 500,000 people and was settled by the Portuguese. We would explore the volcanoes on this stop as well. For some reason, that's a thing my family does. Given the opportunity, we've been to numerous volcanoes. Some of them have been active, and that's been fun. Then we would maybe take some time and explore the city of Mindelo to experience the local culture. Now we're going to have 5 days at sea where we head back across the Atlantic Ocean to Puerto Rico. I'm fairly certain that we would take time to explore Old San Juan, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm certain of that because we've done it a number of times before. Cruise ships dock right there. You can get off and walk. And after having been on the ship for 5 days, we're going to want to get off the ship. The thing is that you're in port. This cruise is in port until 11 o'clock at night, which means it's going to be dark when you leave. That affords the opportunity to actually go kayaking in the bioluminescent bay, which we have also done. There is time for both, and I encourage doing both. All right, so now we have 2 days at sea where we head back to Fort Lauderdale. During this time, we're packing up, right? We're getting ready to get home, and then that's it, right? We're off the ship. 73 days. So what do you think? Before I give this cruise Clint's cruisability score, let me know in the comments below, would you go on this cruise if you had the budget? I didn't talk about how much this cruise costs. It's on Holland America. It's not a luxury cruise. It's actually reasonably priced at a per day rate. But if you had the time and the budget, are you interested in going on this cruise? Just comment below. I would, for sure, I would. But there are some things I think this cruise is missing that I would like to change or that I would recommend. And I'm going to make that recommendation after I give the score for what I scored as today. So one of the things I realized as I was working on the score for this itinerary is that my scoring is kind of too simple for a cruise of this magnitude and diversity and experience. It's just too big. So I've spent the last couple of weeks really rethinking about how do I score a cruise that could take into account a really nice, relaxing or exciting or enriching 5-day cruise out of Florida to a 73-day cruise around Africa out of Florida, and put them in the same kind of scoring bracket. So I have a new scoring methodology that I've come up with. I'm still working on it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, so for this cruise, with my new scoring system, I give it a variety score of 7.5, a repeatability score of 6, an adventure score of 7.5, an enrichment score, of course, of 10, and a relaxation score also of 7.5, because there's a balance of both adventure and relaxation throughout the itinerary. I'm giving an additional ship bonus based on Cruise Critics score of 4 out of 5, and then a novelty bonus of 16.5 additional points. I'll be releasing a video more about how I break down the novelty score soon. That brings our total score to 60 for this itinerary. Okay, so really quickly, what's missing? This is such a cool itinerary, and I'm making some assumptions that this is the best itinerary that Holland America could do given logistics and time and what the ship just was doing and what the ship is going to be doing next. That makes these very tough to piece together. But I would say some things that I wish it was doing and just ignore the logistical problems, okay? There are 2 days at sea after Morocco getting to Tunis. I really wish that the ship stopped at Gibraltar. Gibraltar is one of my favorite stops that I've been to, and you cruise through the Strait of Gibraltar, but based on when you're leaving Morocco, you're likely going to be going by at night, which is just unfortunate that it's going to be missed. If you do see it, it'll be lit up in the distance, and it's unfortunate. I wish it went to Gibraltar given the proximity and the relationship between Gibraltar and Africa. I know that Ceuta makes sense after Tunis given the distance traveled, but if the ship is stopping in the Mediterranean already, add Malta or Alexandria. Malta would be an incredible stop because it really feels heavily influenced by Africa. But we're missing Alexandria at the Nile Delta. So there's a couple of stops in there that I would swap. Maybe not swap, but add in. Maybe removing Crete. Yeah, going to Alexandria would be better too, I think. Okay, there are 2 days in Zanzibar. I would replace one of those and stop in Kenya. It's right there. You get one more country, you get to experience one more country's culture, which I think would be great. And then after Nosy Be, this is where, most itineraries have a decision to make. They either go east back out into the Indian Ocean, or they go west back to the mainland. I would like to have seen this itinerary go back, maybe skip Victoria, go back east and get to Mauritius and Port Louis, and then go down to Reunion. And then you could actually stop on the southern part of Madagascar, which is a cruise stop that I know Norwegian makes. You stop there and now you're on mainland Madagascar, which is a totally different vibe than Nosy Be at the north, which is really a tropical island. So now we've kind of expanded our experience a little bit. And, when we come back across the Atlantic, we spend a day in Puerto Rico. I'm assuming that it's a logistical stop, right? We have to refuel, we have to get more food, we have to do all the things. And Puerto Rico is really set up for that. A lot of cruise itineraries begin and end in Puerto Rico, so they have the logistical infrastructure to make that happen. It just feels really disconnected from this African cruise that was so focused on that part of the world. But that does lead me to the round trip issue from Fort Lauderdale. I asked earlier if money was no object or if you had the budget. This cruise is reasonably priced, all things considered. Would you do this itinerary? Well, check this out. Seabourn. Now we're basically saying that you can afford any cruise because Seabourn is a ultra luxury line. Has a 90-day African cruise that circumnavigates the continent, leaving from Barcelona. It hits 27 countries, including Malta and Gibraltar that I mentioned earlier. You have 39 sea days and 50 days in ports. That's a better than 1-to-1 ratio. This itinerary for variety score is going to get a 10 out of 10 right away. I am not reviewing this itinerary because when you look it up, when you do some research and try to find out what it costs and more about it, it basically says, call us for more information. And that to me reads that the price basically is, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. And while I would be very interested in doing it, I'm probably never going to be able to afford it. So Seabourn, if you want me to review the itinerary, I'd be happy to ride along on it. I'm happy. I will take 3 months off of work and cruise on that cruise, see how it is, so I can let the people know. This has been such an incredible journey through and around Africa over my this is now part 3 of the series. I have just fallen in love with the continent, with the possibilities, and really, really hope that sometime in the not too distant future, I'm able to visit. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video. We're going to be heading back to the Caribbean for my next one, and a viewer brought to my attention an itinerary that I have missed, and they were curious. How would you rate this one? And I looked it up, and it might be the perfect Caribbean itinerary. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss that review coming up, and we'll see you soon.